Welcome back. So now we're going to talk about a very germane topic, globalization. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about globalization. The formal kind of classical definition of globalization basically says that there are a bunch of these networks, and these networks span worldwide distances. Okay, and because of these networks spanning worldwide differences, we all kind of start to look the same over time. Now, what does that mean exactly? We all kind of start to look the same. Who's we? Well, we can be economic actors. They can be political actors, social actors, military actors, scientific actors, environmental actors, any sort of actor that takes place across borders. Okay? Let me give a couple of examples that might clarify this. Okay? Economic, okay, globalization. Well, think about, for example, the fact that free market capitalism exists in many countries of the world. Okay? Think about the fact that, what can you do? Think about the fact that certain corporations have transported managerial cultures and practices across borders. Think about the fact that socialism exists in a wide variety of countries, and it's a practice that has spread. So there are a variety of different economic models that exist in the world, and they kind of look similar from country to country. Socialism in France is not so different from socialism in Germany, at least at its fundamental level. Free market capitalism in the U.S. is not as different as free market capitalism in, for example, Canada, etc. Okay, we talk about social networks. Well, I mean, I guess you could even say, yeah, think of social networks. How about Facebook? How about the fact that on Facebook you can talk and exchange ideas with anyone anywhere in the world? You can exchange ideas with anybody via Twitter. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you can talk and you can say, wow, they do this. This one country I saw on Twitter. Maybe we could do that here. And so you start adopting the best kind of social practices. Okay. The UN conventions also have a very robust aspect socially, in that they prohibit, for example, child labor. And that's a major social force. We also talk about culture. Okay? Again, think of some of these large international fast food chains: McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's. Take your pick. Well, when you can go to McDonald's in France and have a pretty similar experience to what you have here in the United States, and that's another example of cultural globalization. Anywhere you go in the world, you're going to find people wearing jeans, and I can guarantee the majority of people who wear jeans are not Americans. It is a cultural choice, and so people kind of start, again, adopting the best practices. We talk about military trends. Well, I can certainly say, from my own experience in the military, go to your officer courses. Who do you see in your officer course? Well, you have foreigners in your officer course. I know in my lieutenant's course we had a couple of guys from Saudi Arabia, a couple of guys from West Africa, and they were learning our best practices to take back with them. Or when we trained our Iraqi and Korean counterparts, we trained them in our way to do things. And so that's a good example of kind of military globalization. Scientific globalization. Well, what do you think professors are doing during the summer? They're going to these international conferences, and they are presenting their work to these international audiences, and people exchange ideas, and research all kind of start to look alike because we're all publishing the same international journals and going to the same international conferences. Okay? Environmental interdependence. Again, think of things like the Kyoto Protocol, Kyoto Treaty. So we all start to kind of recognize some basic standards when it comes to globalization. So bottom line up front, globalization is basically this idea that we all kind of start to look alike as we spread international best practices across a variety of domains stemming from business, government, and society. Now, of course, We can argue that there are a variety of other forces in globalization. Again, certain dominant ideologies have taken place. I mentioned laissez-faire capitalism, certain forms of democracy, socialism, capital in and outflows. Again, companies investing in foreign countries and expecting some sort of a return. And in order to get that return that they expect, they have certain practices that need to take place. Labor. Again, people going from one country to the next, successfully moving across countries, taking jobs. Some of you may wish to go into consulting. Well, you may go overseas and learn certain best practices in a foreign country and also bring your own best practices with you. Again, multinational corporations, trade is one of the main sources of globalization. But again, multinationals can go over and impose certain managerial practices. Of course, international organizations like the World Trade Organization, the UN, etc., also impose certain governmental norms internationally. And of course, technology is a huge driver of globalization. Again, think of computers, think of Facebook, all these kinds of best practices traveling across the world. So let's kind of talk about the history of, or let's talk about some of the good things about globalization. Why is it a good thing? Okay. Well, first of all, because of globalization, because of the spread of best practices, the average level of poverty in the world has declined. And you may think about, for example, here in the United States, there are many impoverished people. That is absolutely true. However, the overall quality of life could be argued. Okay? Again, with this doctrine of progress, the overall quality of life is still much higher than it was in the U.S., even for a middle-class person 200 years ago. Okay? We talk about, I remember reading something in a magazine, and it was showing, yes, there were people in a certain African country that didn't have access to clean water, but they did have access to a telephone. They had cell phones. Okay? And again, because they have cell phones, because they have access to technology, there are more opportunities available to them and possibly can be used to lift them out of poverty. Of course, consumers benefit from more variety, lower costs, higher quality products. I mean, if you're not sure, those of you that live in Los Angeles, think about going to Koreatown. I mean, all the things that you can get there. 50 years ago, the idea of going for Korean barbecue was completely unknown in mainstream America, and yet now that's something that we can do. You can go to Amazon and pick your favorite products and order them, okay, and they can be brought to you. So you can choose anything you want, basically. It's all at your fingertips now, and you get the best price and the best quality, assuming, okay, bounded rationality again, assuming you have the time to hunt those products out. Again, because of the UN conventions on labor, working conditions for millions of workers have improved. And yes, there are still countries where there is very primitive labor practices. Nonetheless, their quality of life is still better than it was in those same countries 100 years ago. Human rights may or may not have been improving. I think many of you know that human trafficking is still a major issue across the world, but possibly human rights may be improving. Okay. How are we doing time-wise? So I'm going to stop here, and then we're going to switch themes in just a second.